Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Sisters of Legacy. I am going to run our intro and we will be right back. All right, everyone, we are back. So, again, welcome to this week's edition of Sisters of Legacy. Um, we are on typically every Thursday at 8 p.m. Tonight, we have a wonderful guest. Um, there we go. We have a wonderful guest tonight, Matt Genius, who is a licensed therapist. So I am going to introduce him very quickly and bring him on so that we could get right to the conversation. Hey, ladies.
Hey, hey,
Hey,
hey.
All right. So let's bring in Matt. All right, Matt. Hey,
Hey, how you doing, ladies? Thank you for having me.
thank you for joining us. So you, of course, already know Shanetta. And then next to you is Vanessa. Vanessa, this is Matt Genius. He is a licensed. Give us your official title.
Sure, no problem. I got you. Nice to meet you, Vanessa. Good seeing you
Hey.
again, Shanetta. My name is Matt Genius. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of Georgia and Florida, which means I'm a professional therapist. I've been in practice for about 16 years. 8 years of those have been in private practice. In private practice, the other have been working for various agencies in South Florida. Recently transitioned here from South Florida, 2 years here in Atlanta. Happy to be here.
Wow, it's been 2 years.
It's August will make us 2 years. August will make us officially 2 years since we've been here.
Okay, I didn't realize it has been quite that long.
Right.
In 16 years in practice, Matt, you look extremely young, and I know you're not as young as you look. But congratulations for keeping that youthful look going.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's intentional. Like a lot of my clients need to feel something different as far as when they step into the room and see a
Uh-huh.
professional that's a mental professional. They have a stereotype that when they come in, they're going to see a white
An
guy with gray
old white
hair,
man.
with gray hair, with a sweater vest, clipboard, right? And so I think the shock value kind of helps people, ease their anxiety of who they're sitting with to feel comfortable. And then, of course, by the time we have conversation, they understand that the package, you can't just judge by the package. You have to listen and see what else we have to offer. So some clients, for some people, I may not be for everybody, but this is how I show up for my people to feel comfortable when they walk into the room.
nice.
All right. Well, that's a great theory, though. Never thought about it that way. That is absolutely a great theory. So tonight we are going to talk about being flawed versus being intentional. We always say nobody's perfect, right? Everybody says that. Nobody's perfect, especially when it pertains to ourselves. We'll say nobody's perfect. When we mess up, when we fall short, we're quick to throw that out there. But do we give each other that same level of grace? Do we notice that the other person isn't perfect either? That maybe the other person is just flawed, or the other person is just having a bad day, like we were having a bad day, or they didn't sleep enough, or whatever any of the many things could be. Do we ever consider that? So I brought on Matt, who is, as he already told you guys, a professional. This is his area, helping you to navigate some of those thoughts and feelings. So, us ladies, we're here every Thursday and we tell you how we feel, what we think. But I thought, in honor of Mental Health Month, before it ended, we just made it in. It would be great to have Matt to help us out in this area. So, Shanetta, you look like you want to start.
Do I
Go
now? Do I? Okay, I will start. I'm not sure what was giving that energy, but I will definitely get us started. So, in thinking about just the flawed nature of man, the flawed nature of woman. Um, I think that on a daily basis, we can always find ways to kind of look at the negative side or the negative perspective of ourselves and kind of down talk, like, well, I'm not good enough. Well, I can't do that. Maybe I shouldn't try this. Maybe I shouldn't put this on. Maybe I shouldn't wear my hair like that. I think that that's a part of who we are as people in general. In addressing that, in dealing with that, like, what's the, I guess my question to you would be, what's the best approach for that daily self-talk that addresses, I guess, the negative side of things or the flaws that we have?
Yeah, Shanetta, you really opened it up. That's a big question. You know, like, you gave us some room right there because you're talking about how all of us show up, and all of us show up, I think, not intentional. You know, I don't think we sometimes take the time to be intentional on how we show up. So if we go backwards a little bit and understand how our personalities develop, then you can see how sometimes we're just in this default setting of who we believe we are based on the interactions we've had over the years. So personality is governed by genetics and environment, you know, nature and nurture, right? So 30 to 50% is that nurturing that happens in the family and the environment. 50 to 70% is genetic. So let's thank our parents for what they gave us, right? And you know, I'm laughing because I hear in my mind, you know good just like your rotten old daddy, or you know, the things that we say to then create this understanding of how flawed we are. You know, we point back to the flaws of our past to then validate the flaws in the present. You know, you resemble this, you just like that person, you know, and so we develop some of these flaws by the personality that we adopt, that we inherit sometimes, and then we show up that way, believing that that's who we are, as if we cannot change. I hear this a lot, not just in my own work, but even in myself. I believe that I couldn't change who I was and how I showed up because my personality was so ingrained in my identity. I believe that these flaws were then me, not knowing that these flaws can be changed to create an intentional interaction between everyone I encounter. You know, so there is a work to be done, but of course there are some things you can just thank your mom and dad for because it's in you, right? It's in you. We just have to learn how to manage them effectively.
I like that. Managing them effectively.
Vanessa?
Well, I'll just make a comment. Like, I was dealing with a situation and I was upset with someone, and I was talking to someone else about that particular situation and how I felt. And I've been intentional with being reflective and making sure that I don't always overreact or go so much into what I'm feeling and allow that to be where my reaction comes from. So in talking to her, she was like, you know, you're allowed to feel how you feel, and those your feelings are always valid because they belong to you. But even in those moments when you are sitting with whatever that issue or concern is, it's so important to consider what the other person, like Samantha said earlier, what they may be going through. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of those things dictate how they handle you, how they respond to you. You know, you may not be certain of, you know, what their thought process is when they said what they said or when they did what they did. And as I sat in that moment and began to think about the other person's perspective and exactly what is going on in their life, and the fact that I really couldn't even really imagine for real what they were going through, it really helped me to not be so harsh in, you know, how I felt about that situation. And even when, you know, I was talking to someone about my relationship and their response seemed really judgmental, that also helped me to think more about what I say to people and how I respond. Because I'm like, oh my God, do I do that? Do I say those things? Like, is that how I behave? And so for me, at this point in my life, like, is for me, it's really about a lot of reflection and making sure that when I have these interactions with people that I care about, or that I am in any sort of relationship, whether it's personal, professional, whatever it is, that I am very reflective and intentional with how I handle people, because I want to make sure that I am not giving off that thing that I don't want to get in return. So that's kind
That's
of my
powerful.
potential situation.
Yeah, that's powerful. What I'd add to that is that we teach people how to then treat us, based on how we show up. And eventually, as many times as we interact and allow certain flawed interactions to happen, then is the justification for why it continues to happen, right? So how do we show up and then be intentional and not allowing these things to then become a pattern, in the interaction between, let's say, yourself and the other person, so we have to be assertive sometimes in protecting our mental, our emotional, our spiritual, by advocating for us. And so I tell people all the time, you teach people how to treat you. So in their flaws, of course, all of us carry what we would call flaws, but in their flaws, even knowing them isn't a justification for them to maltreatment of us, right? If you know your flaws and you understand what they are, then you have to be accountable to put in that work, or I have to be accountable in creating the boundary so that you won't have access for those interactions to be continuous, because eventually it will go from pattern, habit, to then that personality is right next. It becomes how you interact, and then we default by saying, yeah, that's just who they are, right?
Yeah.
As if they can't change. And everyone, if you have a clear mind, a heart, if you have capacity, you can change. And so let's not justify how we show up based on those flaws. If we desire for the change, if we have intentionality as far as what we desire for change, then it can happen.
But I got a question. So is that really a justification though? Like if I resign to the fact, like, okay, so the three of us, we know someone. I'm not gonna say the name, but as I talk, you ladies will realize who I'm talking about.
Oh
This
boy.
person, they just talk
Mhm.
so much. And in their talking, they often I believe unintentionally can become offensive. They give out way too many details, like things that you're like, oh, you shouldn't have said that out loud. And they don't even realize that it's a thing because they just like to talk. So, like for me, I resigned to just accept the fact that this person likes to talk. Now, what that means for me, though, that is that I understand when I'm conversing with this person, that they're going to get a limited amount of details because I know that inadvertently they're
Yeah.
just going to start talking, and whoever they're talking to is going to know everything. Now, I don't believe it's intentional because I've watched them be this way for years. So my thing is that really a justification? Like this is who you are. And so I don't hold it against you. I don't necessarily give you a pass either. Like, it just makes me more intentional of the boundaries in our relationship. But
Right.
like I'm not justifying your behavior, which is a little distasteful at times. But I've also resigned the fact that unintentionally you can't help it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we look behind the curtains, man, we see some stuff, like understanding the context of how people grew up in their families in those environments, you really get to understand how they show up with their levels of communication. Not everyone understands based on their family of origin how to communicate successfully in a relationship, whether it's friendship, business, romantic. Listen, there are families that, that I grew up around that are very demonstrative in their tones, in their hands, and their, no personal space. They, and that's just how
Are
they
they from
function.
New York?
We're not gonna go there, right? We're not gonna go there.
Certain regional things.
Right? It's not. Yeah, they could be from New York, but there's some from Georgia, Florida, Alabama, right? And so we're everywhere, and it's in us. But it's to say that when you get a chance to look behind the curtains, you have sometimes a understanding that you may not have, and that isn't a justification, it's an understanding. I could understand why you show up that way, but it's not justifying for you to then bring that into another space. Yeah, I understand it, but it's not working for this relationship. So either we create a different type of relationship, or we have to create a boundary in our interactions. And so let's say, for example, a family who had some traumatic experience in their parenting, and so they watch their parents argue and be very demonstrative, and so that becomes normalized in the way they show up. Or in order to be heard in that system, they had to raise their voice. They had to become that person that was, if you don't speak up, you won't get heard. So if you don't, if your tone isn't at this point, then nobody hears you. And so they've learned how to then make space for themselves by showing up this way, not based on any malice, but based on it being normal in certain environments that they grew up in, to then bring that into other spaces. And so the challenge is to help them understand that what was normal for your household may not be normal for everybody else. So let's learn how to create some balance, understand how to then blend into the atmosphere without dominating based on what you feel or felt was normal for you. And that's just learning how to, create balance.
I was
I
going to
have,
use the word unlearn, unlearn some habits or unlearn some things that you've experienced. I think that, like, even what you talked about with, you grew up a certain way and then you have now a new relationship and you only know what you saw.
Mm.
And that causes you to move a certain type of way until you unlearn behaviors. I think I made up my mind before I got married that there were certain things that I just, like, and we all say it sometimes, like, when I grow up, I'm never going to do this. I'm
Yep.
never going to do that. I literally, like, had some things like that. And I literally had to put things in place to ensure that there were certain cycles that did not continue, because they weren't, productive. They weren't the right things. So you have to, like, learn how to unlearn it, because yes, apple and tree.
Right.
You gotta kick that apple a little bit further away from the tree.
Right.
Yeah,
and
I would definitely go ahead, Vanessa. I'm sorry.
I'm just wondering, like, because I know someone, and the more time that I spend with this person, there's more things about them that kind of got me questioning if I'm going to continue in this relationship with this person. And they cool or whatever, but like I said, people, like, from years ago, right? So oh, that's my so and so, that's my homie, blah blah blah, from back in the day. We were so cool and we were so tight. And then they come back into your space and your circle, and you start spending time, and you start realizing that it ain't really what you thought it was going to be.
Right.
And so for me, like, I've mentioned a couple things that I saw, because for me, I kind of feel like I don't want to dim your light. I don't necessarily want to change you, but if there are certain things that you do that aren't becoming, I kind of feel like I do a disservice if I don't say something to you about it. And for me, only for me, I can't, I'm not going to speak for anybody else, because
Right.
if we're in this particular setting and then other people around are saying the same thing, then it can't necessarily just be me. And I think a lot of times, if someone doesn't bring certain things to your attention, you don't even know that it's an issue or a concern. Some people may just shy away from you, and then you'll be like, yeah, I don't really blend with people. I don't really have a lot of friends. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, it's because you've done, A, B, C, and D, and unbeknownst to you, no one has said anything, but they've created those boundaries and they keep their space because, oh, this person is this particular way, or they do A, B, C, and D. So how do you then, like, where do you go at that point? You know what I'm saying? Samantha said that she limits her interactions with her person based on, what she knows could be the outcome. You know what I'm saying? And that outcome could really wind up being negative, or her part, depending on how that goes. But if you feel like the person is genuine, they're true, they're this, they're that, and they have these flaws or what have you, like, is there a guided conversation? Is there I mean, it probably would wind up being, maybe a little hurtful or a little awkward or a little uncomfortable. But for me, like, I really like this person, and I just, like, now I'm kind of, like I said, questioning whether I want to continue, to develop this friendship and this relationship, because like you be doing too much. It too
Right.
much for me, you know what I'm saying? And it's that whole, well, that's just the way they are. Is it really? Like, do
Mhm.
they really know, those things that can be offensive and hurtful or abrasive or what have you? Because, like, for me, some people have told me, like, when you get upset, you say yo. Until they told me that, that was nothing I ever noticed about myself. It's just
Right.
something I did. You know what I'm saying? So is there some of that that kind of factors into those situations as well? And how do we, like, where do we go with that?
Yeah.
Latrina said, hold on one second. The
Sure.
intentional part seems to come hand in hand with being women of a certain age. I agree with that. Go ahead,
Yeah,
babe.
you both said a lot, Vanessa and Shanetta. I think I want to start with what Shanetta said earlier. She said when she was a child, she was saying that um, certain things she just wouldn't do, and I was dying laughing because I heard my younger voice saying, "Watch," right? We say this all the time. Watch when I grow up. Watch.
Yeah. Right.
I'm never gonna, right, right. In the complaining mind of a child, and then as we become adults, those same things that we said we wouldn't do show up in our lives. And so
Absolutely.
I thought that was hilarious. And of course, we have to manage those as well. But to your point, Vanessa, I think we have to get away from feeling like we're going to hurt somebody's feelings, right? And that, because you like this person, then that person's feelings should not be hurt, right? And yeah, we can feel that way. I'm not. I have a hard time saying it sometimes, but as adults, other adults' emotions are not our responsibilities, right? Take that in for a second and feel what that feels like to understand that as an adult, another adult's emotion isn't our responsibility, right? It's not saying that we shouldn't care or we shouldn't empathize, but to say that I love this person. And so this flawed relationship that I have, I'm going to allow this to then continue because I don't want to hurt this person's feeling. That's not fair to you. You deserve better. And that other person deserves a better friend from us, to then call that person out. I love you and I care for you. But guess what? I love me more, right? And so I want to be healthy. I want my mind to be healthy when I'm around you. I want to be myself. I want to be loving. I want to accept. I want to give. But I can only do that in the environments that are conducive for me to then show up that way. If a person is in that space where, it's really challenging me to be authentic and to love and to pour into them, then I have to make that decision based on what it's impacting my life. What happens is that transference happens a lot. Transference happens a lot, meaning that person is dealing with what they're dealing with. They come into your space and then, pour that stuff onto you. You go into your space, and then before you know it, it's impacting the entire community because it's negative. And so, what I think we should do is, yes, we can still care for a person. Yes, we can still love a person, but we have to be able to say, I love you enough to let you know that I want to be treated differently. If I don't care for you, I'm gonna just walk away from you without saying anything, right? If I didn't care for you, if I didn't have a relationship with you, if you weren't valuable for me, but because I value you and I value me, and this is a valued relationship, I'm gonna call you out and call you out with love, with all of those ingredients that's gonna make you still feel valued. And then the decision is in your corner. Do you value me the same way in creating change? Am I valuable enough to you to create that change? If not, that's okay too. It doesn't mean that this person is now a throwaway. That means that our relationship will be at a hiatus until we come back to a space where I can honestly see improvement. We can have some accountability. We've done the work to then get back to where we need to get to, right? So I'm not throwing you away. And I know sometimes we feel like, oh, this person did this to me, and we put them in timeout, right? Adult timeout. Don't call me, don't text me. We block them. For what? That's a lot of energy that we're taking away from ourselves to then manage something that isn't even worth being managed to this point. So the point is, if you value yourself enough, advocate for you, advocate for those spaces, advocate for those relationships. I would give anybody a chance, right? I think Samantha said this. You said you give everybody a chance and then they prove otherwise, right? But even in proving otherwise, I still think people have opportunities for growth. But I'm not going to be responsible to coach you now. I'll bring it to your attention, help you find some resources. That's up to you to now decide how valuable you are to create that change for your own mind, your own body, your own emotions, and your own relationships.
So you're telling me don't block people. Is that what you're saying? You block people?
Yeah, man, stop blocking people. Why are we blocking folks?
Listen,
Don't call me.
I will say this.
I don't need your number to be ringing on my phone.
Don't call me, don't text me. Like and honestly, our society have gotten to a space where we don't see the value in others anymore, right? We believe we can do it all on our own, right?
Right.
And forgiveness and reconciliation has been lost. We really don't know how to come back to a space of coming back together, right? We do. I mean, that song blew up. I can't remember what year it came out. I Need You to Survive. Everybody was singing it.
Right.
What happened to that, right? Blocked, right?
Control.
Go ahead.
In the spirit of reconciliation or whatever, like, how do you do that? Like, how do you reconcile with someone? Let's just say maybe you have been blocked. Maybe, maybe they don't blocked you, deleted your number, don't answer your text, don't respond. Like, how is there a reconciliation there? Like, that's not something that you can force, even if you want to reconcile. So, like, oh, hi, Luke. He said, I agree with that statement that you just made. Oh, Luke. Okay, I'm sorry. I got a little lost. Right. So how do you reconcile when that person's not interested in reconciling? Like, what's your course of action? Where do you go from there?
My course of action is just keep working on myself, so that when they're ready, I'm not waiting for them to get ready, but if they do get ready, I'm always ready. I stay ready because I'm in a space where I'm working on myself continuously to always have a bridge. I'm not burning bridges. I don't have any malice in my heart, towards you. I would love to see you grow, but in the time that you haven't, shown any change. I'm not going to put myself in a situation to where the damage is going to fall on me, to then where it's going to be a domino effect in my life. So I'm going to create a boundary until, we have intentionality, which is part of the word you use, and accountability. Don't just tell me you're sorry. Tell me what action steps you took to make sure that we're not going to get to this endpoint again, this impasse again. No. So what are we doing to then create that change? If you need intervention, there are people, there are, pastors, deacons, counselors, to where if the relationship is valuable enough, make it happen. And it is worth it. It is worth it. It is worth it. And a lot of our relationships is worth it. We have sisters that aren't speaking to each other. Mother and daughter, husband, and there are a lot of relationships, family members, communities that are broken off of minor things, things that honestly, when we pull back, when we go far from it, when we go from micro to macro, when we really expand it, we're like, what were we talking? Why were we? What is this about, really? And when you pull back the layer, is usually ego, is usually insecurities, is usually some of these hurts that are in the background that we don't have spaces to talk about, that we bring into our relationships unintentionally. Hurt people is what people say, right? Right. And so let's work on getting better. So it's my job to work on me. You work on you.
So Luke said there isn't enough reconciliation anymore. I totally agree with that. People don't, like, to your point, you said block them, delete them, you're getting them off your Facebook page. I have to say, honestly, I don't have the energy for that. I can't remember to take you off my Facebook, or block your number. Like, and that's intentional for me. Like, I intentionally try not to let your behaviors, whether they're good or bad, get me to the point where I gotta block you, trying to erase you from the earth. Like I feel like that's a lot of negative energy. Then I gotta remind myself that I'm upset with you all the time.
Right.
Especially if it's somebody, right? Like somebody you gotta see. Every time now that I see you, I'm forcing myself to relive
Mm-hmm.
whatever got us here. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so, some of these things, like, I feel like is just a little exhaustive. Like, we're putting so much energy in the wrong place. Like, Luke said there's not enough reconciliation. Maybe sometime we could just say, like, I don't even know if sorry, because I know people have an aversion to that word. Like, can we just move forward? How do we move forward? Let's start there. How can we move forward? Where do we
Conversation.
go from here? Right. Let's have some conversation, some adult
Right.
conversation,
Right.
where
Yeah.
I talk, you listen, you talk, you know what I'm saying? You talk and I listen. And I think sometimes if people would talk and definitely listen more, reconciliation could definitely become more of a thing again.
When you understand how we got here in this individualistic society, then the
Mhm.
context of how we handle forgiveness and reconciliation makes sense, right? We're in a very advanced society, right? We have all that we need right here in our cell phones, right? In the palm of our hand. So you feel in this society that the person to your left and to your right isn't as valuable because you got it all for yourself. But in other societies, I watched a TED Talk years ago about Sierra Leone conflict, where they had internal conflict based on some issues they were having. Right, so they had invaders and people came in and they made the community war against each other, and so they were figuring out how then can we come back and rebuild this community to have relationships with each other and really reconcile. And so they tried a bunch of different ways that was not working for that community. They erected this $1 million courthouse, right? Multi-million-dollar courthouse. And the people are like, man, we're not going to that. Why would we go to that? And so they created these smaller civil buildings. They didn't go to that either. What worked for them was what worked for them from the onset. They had to come to their community, join in their rituals. And their rituals were after dinner, everyone in the village would gather around a big fire. They would sing, they would dance, they would have a good time, but they would also reconcile in that specific time when they gathered together. And one specific example of the reconciliation that took place was one young man murdered another young man's father and crippled that same young man. Right. And in real time, I watched this happen. So the young man who was crippled and lost his father in this circle of reconciliation, look at Sam's face. Sam was like, oh no, right? He called the other young man out of the circle. He's like, that young man right there murdered my father and he crippled me. And the village elder was like, is that true? The other man confessed and said, yes. And let me explain the context. He said, um, the people had guns to my head and they said they were going to kill me and kill him if I don't kill his father and beat him. So I was forced to do it. I did it. I didn't want to do it. This guy was my friend before. I'm sorry. And he said it with full sincerity. In that same moment where he said sorry, the village elder asked him, do you accept his apology? He said yes. They hugged it out and started dancing immediately. Everybody circled around them. They cheered, good times. Now their friendship is back together, and the person who was crippled now has his friend back that can now assist him in the way they live in that community, right? Do we have anything like that here? No. When I heard it, when I saw it, I'm like, what is happening? How could you forgive somebody that murdered your husband and crippled you? Well, they don't have the relationships we have here where we don't feel like we need our neighbor or need a person to then help us create a life for ourselves. In our minds, we don't think that way, but we do need each other. We do need to pour into each other, if not with our actions, with our words, with our eyes, with our tones, how we gather. And so it worked for them because they understand the necessity of a neighbor, of a brother, of a friend. I think we've lost that value. So to think about reconciling, we got to think about how we got here and how we gather. What makes sense for you, Sam, may not make sense for Vanessa, may not make sense for Shanetta, of how they reconcile. So reconciliation and forgiveness feels and looks a particular way based on you, based on your household, based on your understanding. So make it make sense for you. What will make you feel like this is not an issue for me anymore? And be specific and make it happen, because it's worth it. There's some people I'd love to reconcile with, but they're not ready. And so until they are, I'm here. I'm here working on me, preparing my mind to be ready to say, yes, forgiveness was always there for you. I forgave you years ago. I'm not carrying that. I don't have no malice inside of me. And I'm waiting for us to then have those relationships that we've had before. But we have to learn how to come back together and create accountability, like Lou said.
Right. I think people have to be willing to talk to one another and actually hold themselves accountable. Right. I think that's absolutely true. But let me ask a question. Does reconciliation have to mean we skip off together holding hands?
No,
No,
not necessarily. Yeah.
right.
No, it
Like,
doesn't. No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean that the relationship will be the same. It's just to say that I still have value and still have space for you. We may then have to grow back to get to that space. And that's where we rebuild trust.
right.
We rebuild our communication, we rebuild the relationship. And then you decide based on what has been consistent, what has been, honest, what has been reliable, to then open up to say, we can graduate from where we were to a new phase, and keep on moving that forward based on the change that you've seen and you've been experiencing.
And I think some of that also goes to your personal place, like where I was 3 years ago and where I am today.
Right.
Like I'm not her. You know what I'm saying? Like for the
Mhm.
most part, I'm not her. Those things, old things have passed away, and like I'm I've grown a lot, I've matured a lot. And so, what was acceptable for me then is not acceptable for me now, and vice versa. You know what I'm saying? So once you've grown some, you know what I'm saying, as well, then even as you said, like when you're actively working on yourself, when you have those opportunities or those situations to reconcile or rectify or be corrected or correct someone, like it's genuine. You know what I'm saying? It's not hard. It's not difficult. It's a lot harder to hold on to something if that's all you have to hold on to. You know what I'm saying? So it's like it just that growth and that accountability, like Luke was saying, of yourself. Like a lot of times we're gonna put it on the other person. Well, they did and they said, and so I'm not. But that's still not you. That person 9 times out of 10, they go on with their life. Like you over here holding this bag, whatever it is, and they over there, living their best life, doing whatever
That's
it is.
like,
I can't tell you how many people have blocked me on social media and they number, and I ain't even know because I'm not even thinking about you. Like it ain't even that serious for me.
right.
You know what I'm saying? So, somebody said, "Oh, look at such and such," and I go in there like, "Oh, really
Right.
can't," because apparently we're not friends anymore. And I know for me, I used to do that. Like I would like if we not cool or whatever. For me, there was something that felt really good about being able to delete you from social media. Like it stopped you from existing, right? Like you're no
Right.
longer in my world because you and I are not friends on social media no more. Now take that. You know what I'm saying? But like you said, as you get older, and then like, if you do reconcile and not, now we're not going to be friends on social media. I'm sorry. We're going to do this friendship over here and work on this here and just see how that goes. Because social media, even though it's, everywhere and involved in so many things, that's still not real life. That's still not our life.
Right.
Yeah, that's good. A social media piece, I think we found ourselves being victimized by it as well. Meaning sometimes we don't even know how much it's taking away from us to then live out loud on these platforms. Those aren't real relationships, is what I'd say. Like you don't really know me because you see a couple of pictures of me and my family. My personality isn't necessarily seen in all of these spaces, and so that's not where we go to reconcile, right? And so that's not where I go to solve any of my personal issues, And so, and if that's where people go, that means that we've gone far away from what socializing really means, like really knowing a person, right? Don't DM me, call me, right? Like you got my number, right? Don't leave a message under a photo. You reach out to me, speak to me, and let's make room for each other that way. Like there are other ways to manage it. to where it doesn't have to go to the public to then, let the
Unless
public.
you block me, and then I gotta leave a message under your page because you're not getting my
I
messages.
get my messages on my phone call.
I'm
Gotta
leaving
send an
unblock
email.
me. Listen, you gotta say unblock me so you can get my text.
Oh,
He says social media has made us very unsocial. Oh,
true,
absolutely. I
right?
That's a
totally
good statement. Yeah.
agree with you. I don't even know why it's called social media. It definitely should be called entertainment. And I think
Oh
if
yeah.
we
The internet
redefine
is
some of these
undefeated. You
things,
hear me?
how you were saying about the tribe or whatever in Sierra Leone. Like, let's be honest, killing my daddy and crippling me, like
Yeah.
that's a reason to, you know what I'm saying? Like, not that we should ever hold unforgiveness,
There
but
you go, right?
those are valid,
Valid.
extreme reasons of
Yeah.
why I should block you from everything. And like those are valid reasons. And I think about like you were saying, sisters aren't speaking. You're not speaking because you don't like something I said. Like, everything is so frivolous for us. It doesn't take anything. Oh, well, she did that and she thought it was the right thing. I didn't. So I'm not talking to her. Like you said, we're quick to throw away
Right.
people, situations,
Right.
whatever it is really no value seen in it.
We don't know how to disagree, and that's
Mm,
the bigger thing, is that everybody doesn't have to agree with you.
you're right.
Everybody doesn't
Absolutely.
have to think the way you think or believe what you believe.
Mm,
And that's, I think, the biggest part of our problem with other people, where we can't socialize properly because we feel like if you don't think exactly the way I think, then clearly we can't be friends. We can't,
Right.
we can't associate. And that's not necessarily true. We can disagree on something and be like, I intensely feel this way. You very strongly and passionately feel that way. So, it's a point of difference. So it's okay. I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have with people, is being able to just
Oh,
disagree and not be disagreeable.
I think we're living in a throwaway society now.
mhm.
We can have a different opinion and still be fine. Absolutely. She said, May I ask a question? What is you guys' opinions on couples being friends or not on social media?
So, like, if you're not friends with your husband on social media, or you're not friends with your boyfriend or something on social
I
media,
mean, yeah, like I don't think like
do we
so
still love each other? Like, are we still in a relationship?
so I will say, for a while, me and Anthony had that interesting situation. So like I absolutely did block him on I blocked him on Facebook. And not only did I block him, I knew his password to his Facebook, and then I deleted all the pictures of me off of his Facebook. This was
That's a
some years ago.
lot.
This was some years ago. I will say this was some years ago.
Right.
And I did. I deleted all of me off of his page, and then I blocked him. In my mind, it seemed like the perfect thing to do.
Right. I got
Really,
you now.
right? Like I just wanted to upset him.
Yeah.
Naturally, it did. But then, like, so I gave him back all the pictures. But then he was like, "I don't want to be your friend on social media anymore," because he felt like he didn't want it to be something like I could give and take away just whenever,
Yeah.
whenever I wanted, just to take a stab at him. So I
Yeah.
think, like, if you're in a relationship, to be honest, I think the healthy place for a relationship is not necessarily social media. So, like, if you need social media to validate your relationship, it's
Mhm.
kind of already in trouble. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we have to be friends online so everybody know that I'm your girl or I'm your boo, then there may be some things in your relationship that you might need to have some conversations about. So
Mm,
I think take it or leave it. If it's a line drawn in the sand for you, you might want to think about why.
Mhm.
yeah.
It's the have to,
Thank you.
or the validation piece,
Right.
that I think is the bigger part of it. Like, if it's, we just, we are because we are, or if it's, it has to be this. If we're
Right.
not friends on social media, we're breaking up today.
Right.
I don't know.
Listen, I've heard a true story of a couple that broke up because the fiance didn't wish the young lady happy birthday on social media, right? And so
Oh.
and so
I mean, I've
think
heard about 20-something-year-olds doing that. Like
right.
my
I'm like,
sister is
what
22,
is
she's
happening? Like, what is
definitely
happening? Why? Where? What happened? So for a lot of us, what we've learned how to do is create an escapism through social media. So that
Right.
is sometimes our safe space, and we feel that the partner could then be invading that safe space. That's the only space sometimes that we feel that we have exclusivity of expression, of then being entertained. And so sometimes I think what it is that you don't want the judgment to come from, or the interference to come from, or the perspective to then come from somebody else on what your experiences are on social media. Do what you must, but that's just one way. That's not the only way. That's one way of
Right.
carrying out in the relationship. I don't know if that is healthy for a relationship, because I live with you, right? Like, if I'm husband and wife or we're in a relationship, we already have an intimate relationship. How more intimate can we get on a social platform? So that doesn't really count for me. If I don't ever see you on social media, I have access to you in real life. And so
Right.
that
Real.
doesn't matter. If you don't wish me happy birthday or anything, that doesn't matter. You just told me, I just so I don't you just gave me a gift.
I need pictures. I need the flowers.
The
Wait, hold
real.
on. Step back. Let me get the camera. Let me record you coming in, bringing me all like.
Right. As if it didn't happen if everyone doesn't see it,
Right.
Like,
Right.
yeah. I really want to eventually I'd love to talk about how the Truman Show is now all of our lives. You know, remember the Truman
Okay.
Show? That's all of our
Yes.
lives right now. Everybody is living in the Truman Show, where we're agreeing to this, where we share every aspect of our
Right.
life. We're waking up like, good morning. I just woke up today. I'm about to have my breakfast. See? I'm like, I don't care. Have your breakfast, man. Like, do what you do, But and when we invite that, we invite other aspects and perspectives into our lives that we may not be able to manage. And so it's a lot that we take in by participating. We have to have that balance. So what that
Right.
balance looks like, you have to decide, what do you want to feel in your relationships in person versus what's happening.
Oversharing to others. Right.
Yeah, versus what's
I
happening online.
I will say, like, lately, like, I've totally ascribed to that. Like Father's Day, we of course did things for Anthony, and then we spent the day together. We went out, we did some things, and like it was getting late, and I was like, oh man, you didn't even take a picture of the stuff, I put on Facebook. And like while I was talking, I was like, do you hear yourself? Like,
Yeah.
why does it matter? And like while I just kind of stopped talking, and I was like, it does not matter. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we did it, you got it, you appreciated it. We had a great day. We spent time. Like, it didn't have to go on Facebook. And I was just like, oh yeah, we're just gonna forget to post this year because it's unnecessary. I don't even understand why I'm posting. I'm posting so other people can think that I appreciate you as the father of my children and my husband. Like, sometimes it really does become like too much. She said it's like they need Facebook. Right. It's the validation. Like, I need somebody that I may or may not know to know
By
that I take
strangers,
care of my husband.
people who don't pay your bills, people who say
Right.
Right.
opinion
Like,
of you matters at all, none. You know what I'm saying? And we hold that thing as well. I know people like we have a running joke. Like if I want to know, what this person got going on, I'm just gonna go on Facebook. Like, and I'll
Yep.
know,
Oh,
I'll be like, how you ain't tell me you was leaving the country? I got to go on social media to find out, like
Yeah.
and we all do it without knowing at times. Absolutely. That's where the intentional piece comes in. Sometimes
right,
we have to be more intentional, like Matt said, how we show up and how we show up in our relationships, how we show up in our everyday life, how we show up as parents to our children. Like, sometimes I stop and I consider, like, what do my kids really think of me? And not the me that I tell them I am, but the me, you know what I'm saying? Because do as I say, not as I do. Like the me that they see me as. Like, like the me that they watch, the me that they experience every day. Sometimes, we have to take a moment and slow it down and be intentional in some of these areas. Like I say it, and I know people always look crazy. I think, especially for me, the pandemic was like one of the best times ever, because I think it forced people or gave them an opportunity to actually slow down and live your life. Like there were people, that I know their relationships changed during the pandemic. Some for the better, some you kind of realize you need to get on out. But it was that time where you could just slow down and be in the moment.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Like there was a change, I think, during the pandemic that caused people to pay attention in a different way.
Right.
And even for me, like I went back to like old school writing letters instead of texting people, and literally went and got I ordered off of Amazon, not went and got, even before the pandemic, I was an Amazon issue person. But I ordered like stationery cards, and I literally sat and and I had my kids handwriting notes and letters, because it was just kind of like, okay, well, we're here. So we're not going to go anywhere. We don't have to be stuck on the computers all the time. Let's do something different. And I think that that's important too, because that's where you really get to know people differently. The social aspect of it becomes really social when you can interact differently, and maybe like kind of the old fashioned ways of doing things, instead of like all of our high speed, high tech, high everything, moving fast way of doing everything the way we do it now.
Listen, those social media platforms are very intentional. I don't know if you guys had a chance to see the documentary, The Social Dilemma, on Netflix. Came out a couple years ago. Great documentary. Go check it out. Very informative. They talk about the creators of these platforms and how they are now struggling with what they've created, and then having issues with then allowing their kids to participate in some of these social platforms because of how they pull you in and train us. I think it's called classical conditioning. That when somebody is rewarded based on what they do, as soon as you do something right, that's how we train our pets, right? Good dog, you give them a treat, right? And so for us, we show up on IG and we see all these likes and shares. We're like, oh, look at that, right? Oh, right. We feel so good. Facebook had this one added quality that I don't see anymore. But when you used to open Facebook, they used to greet you with a flurry of likes, like of hearts, and show you how many people liked your pictures, to burst out in front of you. So if you open Facebook and you got a bunch of likes, oof, right in front of your face. I think they took that down because they realized it was too much. But what it's saying is that they're going to trap you. They're going to make you feel that this is where the validation comes from. And so we believe it. And sometimes, like you said, Sam, you don't even know why you're doing it. We're just doing it because we've been programmed and rewarded for what we do. The reward is how many likes, how many shares, how many visits, how many this, how many views, how many that. That's the reward. And we keep going back to get that thirst quenched from the platforms. And so we're going to keep doing it, keep showing up.
Luke said, I think the creator of TikTok said that his children could never be on the platform, which is crazy. Absolutely. It's absolutely crazy. But that just goes to show how little he value his consumers, like how little he valued the people that his subscribers, like he don't even care. He could care less about us or the quality that TikTok, if it even adds quality to our life. That's not his concern, which is sad. But here we are. So Matt, I thank you so much for coming on. I so appreciate it. I know I had to steal you from the brothers, but since I'm on at night and they're on in the morning, not
It
really a
works.
big deal.
Yeah.
Right. It does work. So say your name, spell it, and tell people how they can find you.
Of course, first, I'd like to thank Vanessa. Great points. I love all that you said. I hope that you reconcile, find space to make space for, those people that you block or blocked you. Let's get back together. And then to Shanetta, I appreciate all of the stories you've shared and, on how, you're seeing those trends and how we can actually switch back to come back to what we call family and be intentional. And Sam, always a pleasure being on this platform with you guys. You can find me on all platforms at Matt Genius, MatJeanius on all platforms. That's IG, Facebook, YouTube, and whatever else. And if you'd like to get, a consultation, I am a licensed therapist in Florida and Georgia. If you'd like more services, I do individual, couples, and workshops on a variety of topics when it comes to mental health issues for schools, organizations, businesses, small or large. We will definitely cater to what your needs are when it comes to mental health services. That website is called Genius Consultant, Jeanius Consulting. geniusconsultingllc.com. You can find my wife and I there. That's our business together. And that's it. Matt Genius. I don't think I gave the number. The number you can reach me at via text is 754 300 6127. 754 300 6127. Text first, of course, so then we can schedule a time to speak and then we can go from there.
Absolutely. So Matt, again, I totally appreciate it. It has been great to have you on. We got you just before the month ended. So this is a perfect way to end mental health month. I just want to thank everybody, the viewers, the comments. Luke, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in so long. It's so great to see you, even if it's in the comments. I appreciate you, Monica. Hey, we went to high school together.
Hey.
So I saw Lisa come in, and of course my honey pie's in here somewhere. And Trina, you was on the wrong side of the camera, but we gonna forgive you. We still love you, but we need you to come on back to us. Come on back. So, guys, we are on every Thursday at 8 p.m. Ladies, did you have any final thoughts?
No final thoughts. This has been a good show.
Okay.
Fantastic.
So yes, we are on every
Very
Thursday
enjoyable.
at 8 p.m. Hopefully we'll be able to just still Matt away again and have him come back and visit us sometime soon. But guys, thank you so much for joining us. If you're watching a replay, we appreciate that as well. Until next week, stay safe.
Blessings.
Thank you for watching.